Okay, I think we will get started now as some more people filter in. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jessica Kaplan, and I'm the horticulture manager here at the Conservancy. And we are so excited about our evening with the author featuring Teresa Speight tonight. This spring and summer, the horticulture exhibition at Madison Square Park, Spring Forward into Summer, highlights the cut flower industry. This exhibition explores the utilitarian art, cyclical themes, and cultural significance of the cutting garden. If you haven't stopped by the park, now is the time. Our free cut flower stand is stocked every morning, so please come and take a flower with you for your day. For this third installment of our four-part horticulture Zoom series, we are highlighting Teresa Speight, a wonderful author, podcaster, and gardener. She truly does it all. And you can see I even have her beautiful new book displayed behind me. We have absolutely enjoyed reading it here at the park. And we would like to encourage you to head to our website after this and watch our previous horticulture Zoom sessions where we hear from local cut flower farmers and local florists if you haven't done that yet. So Teresa Speight is a native Washingtonian, former head gardener for the city of Fredericksburg, Virginia, author of Black Flora and co-author of The Urban Garden, 101 Ways to Grow Food and Beauty in the City. Terry is a garden writer, podcaster, visionary, garden coach, and cut flower farmer. She's the past Region 2 Director of GardenCom International, co-chair of Fiesta Place Community Garden, and president of the Jabali Amani Garden Collective, an NGC virtual garden club. Sharing the love of gardening allows her to keep moving and encouraging others to garden. As a true steward of the land, Terry shares her passion on her website, cottageinthecourt.com. So please head there if you haven't been there before. And please stay tuned for the last session of our Horticulture Zoom series program on August 18th. And just one quick housekeeping note before we get started, please put all your questions for Terry in the Q&A located at the bottom of your screen, and we will try to answer as many as we can at the end of Terry's presentation. And now, without further ado, I will pass it over to Terry, and we'll give her a second to screen share and get set up.
Kind of helps if I unmute myself, right? Hi, I am Teresa Speight, and my formal name is Teresa Speight, but I am excited to have written a book I think that is important for now as well as for the future. And I'd like to share my thoughts along the way. Who am I? Jessica covered the bulk of it. I am a native Washingtonian from Riggs Park. I have my website. I'm a great garden speaker, a freelance garden writer, and many other things. Sometimes I sleep, and I have two wonderful grandsons, two beautiful daughters, and my dog, Precious. They are my team. Why this book and why now? Well, my editor came to me. She is a garden writer as well, Deborah Prinzing. And she said, there is something that has been overlooked in the industry, and I wanted to know if you would like to collaborate on it. So I said yes. Had no clue what I was getting into, but I knew from conversations with many others in horticulture and floristry that Deborah was right. Something was missing. There are a lot of creatives, and they're kind of tucked back in. No one really knows. There are opportunities for wonderful collaborative ideas with big vendors, small vendors, weddings and whatnot. And if people don't know about us, then those opportunities are missed. There also kind of was a lack of a space that we could showcase our talents. I knew when I took my grandsons down to see Pearl Fire in South Carolina that there was something about our hands in the soil. This man is not trained, but he can trim up a shrub like nobody's business. And what was his start? He pulled a shrub out of a trash can. And that was his start. Who knew that Mahalia Jackson, singer extraordinaire, but did you know she owned a flower shop? Many people are simply not aware of this, but she did. And it was said that if you bought flowers from her, she just might sing at your funeral. And then there's Ethel Early Clark. Earlier this year, several of us gathered together, Abra Lee, Sean Spencer, Wamboy Ippolito, Guyna Hammond, and one of the past presidents of our garden club of Greater Philadelphia, Judge Ransom. We gathered together and we celebrated the Negro garden clubs. These are women like your grandmother, like your great aunt, your auntie. These are women that had no horticulture experience, but they knew how to put their hands in the soil and create bouquets, create beauty, bring vases of flowers in, share with other people in the neighborhood what to do with their flowers. It was more than that, though. They encouraged people to vote. They encouraged people to take care of their communities. I listen even today in my own community. I'm in an urban setting in Prince George's County, Maryland, mostly African American. And there's conversations about the cost of flowers, having flowers in your home. Well, these women did it. They had flower shows. This encouraged me to start my garden club, Jabal Yamani Garden Collective, because we are used to having beauty at our fingertips, whether we're trained or not. Paying homage to Professor Marie Clark Taylor. This woman was absolutely phenomenal. She was the first of many things. And as we celebrate Black botanists, she was one of the first women of any race to obtain a doctorate at Fordham University. That speaks volumes. President Johnson realized her talent at Howard University and requested that she take this knowledge, this learning across the world. So she was internationally known as well as one of our local sheroes. She headed up the botany department at Howard University until she retired. And she passed away right here in DC. When we think about flower farming or farming in general, we think about it as a necessity, a means to an end, and a means of survival. But it really is more than that. Most people think, oh, I'm going to get a cute little bin and I'm going to grow something great on my terrace. They think about food. Food is beautiful. I'm not going to deny that. But so are flowers. And when you eat that salad at your table, wouldn't it be nice to have a small bouquet of a rose from your garden or anything cut from your own piece of the earth? Here's a fact. A lot of my friends laugh when I say this, but we really do grow more than collards. We grow beauty. We've grown beauty for quite a while. This is a print from the Library of Congress from 1870. Now, these women had no horticultural degrees. They didn't know what could grow where, but they grew it. And then they brought it to the market to sell it. How amazing is that? I love this print. I want to delve deeper because as a native Washingtonian, I want to know where this corner is. I want to stand where these women stood and maybe sell my own flowers there one day. This photo is my inspiration. Which brings us back to this book, Black Flora. This is just a sampling of the people in this book. The people in this book in my mind, have made history, because there's never been another book that really talked about who we are and what we do. Nicole Cordier. This young woman lives on the Big Island in Hawaii. When you look at the cover of Black Flora, that is Nicole's work. She is a botanical artist extraordinaire. And in speaking with her and knowing that she gathered those flowers from her own parcel of land, from her educational pursuits, the garden called her to become a botanical artist. She is very humble. And just in speaking with her, you would never know the talent in those hands. Shonda Zalea. She's right here in the DMV as well. Growing up in Costa Rica, she was surrounded by tropicals. Can you imagine that? I would love to have tropicals every time I go out my front door. Well, she had many careers before she became a florist. And when she decided to get married, she realized she could not really afford a florist to do her wedding. And she sat down, and as some of the other women in my book have said, that genetic remembrance came through in her hands, and she created her own beauty for her wedding. She is now has her own floral shop, and she is amazing. And my friend Gina, we are such kindred spirits. In California, Gina was a career government employee and decided, I'm doing these events on the side, I'm creating floral arrangements, I'm going to take these classes at a community college, and I'm going to just be free. I'm going to see where it takes me. Well, Inspirations by Gina is real, and I understand she just got her first van. So you see, she even grows her own cut flowers. We were talking about the dahlias that she's growing this year. So in her arrangements, she's even utilizing what she's growing. There's so many more people in this book, from people that have grown up on farms and decided to kind of expand that thought process into a cut flower movement, and finding out that flowers sell. And even without having formal education on formally arranging, we're doing it. It is from our hands. Like Joy Proctor. Joy and I had similar backgrounds. She was a legal secretary, and she decided, no, that's not what I want to do. Joy has been voted as one of the top florists. She's been in Martha Stewart, Harper's Bazaar. She's a destination wedding designer. So she goes around the world. No formal training. I won't share all the tidbits from the book, but it started when she helped someone with a wedding and they couldn't afford flowers. And from that, Joy makes dreams come true. She's a stylist, editorial director. She, in my world, is living her dream. The flowers called her. This is one of the dreams that she made come true. And it just speaks to a natural setting and utilizing what's at her fingertips. Joy is amazing. You really want to get to know her. Isha Foss. She was on a plane going to an interview in another state, landed in Virginia, and she is still there. She's expanding her business, and she too is amazing. She's on Instagram. Her floral creations will blow you away. Imagine getting married with something like this as your backdrop, created by hand. She also gives back to community by offering internships to train other young women how to work with cut flowers, and men. Giving back to community is something that we naturally do. And as a cut flower florist, farmer, or stylist, it is important that we reach back no matter where we live. Kaifa Anderson Hall. This is a woman you really want to get to know. You know, these huge events with flowers, what happens after the event? Well, Kaifa and her team will collect them and take them to senior centers where people can't see, but she interprets the beauty of that cut flower, whether it's by fragrance, by texture, by just the essence of the plant, the flower. She helps people reimagine what those flowers do for us. Flowers lift our spirits. Having a cut flower in your hand, sticking it in a vase, adding to it, it just adds joy to your life. Kaifa brings a lot of joy to the different wards in Washington, D.C., and her journey as well. She wasn't sure. She wanted to do social work, and the flowers called her name. Flowers will call us, and when it does, or when they do, we definitely need to answer the call. It doesn't have to be perfect. Whatever you see along the way, collect it. Put it in a vase. Try something new and different with it. You'd be amazed at what it will do for you mentally, as well as just in your heart. She really focuses on communities, children at the playground. She'll have a flower giveaway. She'll have a flower event where you can purchase a bouquet to help another entity. She's really into giving back. And Kaifa, I met her at the first Slow Flower Movement event here in Washington, D.C. And she continually inspires me. She really, really does. And then there's Braun, Flower Guy Braun. This young man does not like blue hydrangeas. I do. I think they're phenomenal. I grew up with blue hydrangeas. Ron reaches back into the community as well. His story started with a 6-inch vase and someone asking him to help with their wedding. He wasn't sure because he was in a totally different profession, but he decided, why not? And he utilized the cut flowers from local vendors, local florists. He uses them when he does extravagant displays of beauty. Imagine him coming to you saying, hey, do you want to help do the setup? Do you want to help do the bud vases for this event? He gives back. He also teaches to make sure that people that might want to be involved in this industry are exposed to everything that happens in it. Even during the pandemic, this young man created an entity so that the floral creatives could gather, vent, connect. It paid off. Look at that. From his hands, these flowers graced a table and brought somebody joy. He is amazing. I love his work. So let's bust some myths here. African Americans in floristry are not a monolith. We really, really, really do grow more than collards. It's about the food. You can even use collards in a bouquet. I have. I've used onions. I've used many items from the vegetable garden in a bouquet because why not? When I arrange bouquets at work, I'm greeted with a bucket most Tuesdays of an assortment of materials. I have mixed things like tomato branches. Why not? And onions and garlic. This week, it was also fig leaves. Why not? Mix it up, add a little diversity to it. The earth, growing and farming is something that we do, but it is in our hands. When I think about how African Americans came across the waters in the bow of ships, we landed on soil that we were not familiar with. We were brought here to feed and provide for whoever brought us here. And we didn't know what was going to grow here. However, somebody was smart enough to tuck an okra seed in their hair. Maybe they were smart enough to bring some collard seeds wrapped up. And from that, we started growing for food, but also for beauty. Have you ever seen the bloom on an okra plant? I've used those in arrangements before. We are truly creatives by nature. When I see children in the garden, it just makes my heart full. Why? Because that's the next generation of possible florists, possible floral designers, possible flower farmers. In my book, I speak to what it takes. Some of these women, everyone didn't have a struggle. Some of these people chose to go into this field, like the Cottons, a young couple. They did not want to be a power couple with mega jobs and a mega house. They wanted to farm. And when they developed a partnership with a local organic farmer, they said, let's try flowers. They were like, flowers, people want food. They tried the flowers. And now when I look at their Instagram and I see them growing amaranth, an Asian grain, using it in an arrangement, sunflowers, they have their children out there with them. They are giving their children a gift that some of us had and some of us may not have had. I would visit my ancestors on my mom and dad's side in North and South Carolina. I remember those blue hydrangeas by the door. I remember the white iris. I remember picking weeds, chicory, and making a bouquet. Because to me, it brought me joy. It lifted my spirit to have a flower tucked behind my ear as I was outside playing. It just makes sense. If you capture the inquisitive nature of children when they're young, you'd be surprised at where that might end up. So let's talk about my garden. I'm at a point in my life where I'm thinking about my future. And when I think about my future, what am I going to do? Am I going to retire and knit booties? No, I'm not. I want to have a cutting garden. So I've started laying the groundwork. Major construction is going on in my backyard. But in the meantime, I am planting things that I can move around that I can use in a vase now. And it starts early in the season with the Lenten rose or hellebore. One of my favorite places to visit is Chanticleer. It's a pleasure garden in Pennsylvania. I love it there. Why? They will take a bloom from a Lenten rose and float it on water. I have done the same thing in a bowl in my office. It captures people's attention, and it's just something most people don't think about doing. When the garden calls you, you really must answer. When I make arrangements, nothing is off limits. So I sow seeds of larkspur, an early spring blooming. It just adds such joy and fascination. And I love it when people want to touch the blooms. Using leaves from my plants, Solomon's seal is one. The leaves are absolutely stunning. In this arrangement, the white flower is Nigella. It is absolutely beautiful. And it's in more colors than the white, but the white is like fireworks in a vase. No matter what time of year you go into the garden, gather whatever is in bloom. It's important. You can walk past it and see it every day, and then a rainstorm might come and that bloom might become tattered, a little beat up. But if you cut it and bring it in the house, that lifts your spirits. As I'm giving this presentation, I got 2 big bouquets of hydrangeas that I cut from my garden, tall phlox, all from my garden. A subtle scent goes a long way when you bring the beauty from outside into your home. When the peonies begin to swell, those buds bring me so much joy. Why? I love peonies. From the architectural interest of their leaves, I use the leaves in arrangements. I use the leaves in arrangements now. Why? Because I'm in the DMV, where they're going to get a little powdery mildew in about another week. I saw 1 leaf today. So when it gets to powdery mildew, I cut those leaves off and put them in the trash. But why not use the leaves now in arrangements? It makes a great base. And whatever you put above it, it kind of frames them. Using the smaller buds, if you debud the peony when you'll have a cluster of buds, take the small ones off. You can use them as filler for something else that's blooming. Meanwhile, the one that you leave, it gets fat and you have a bloom that beats the band. You do want to stake the peony so that the blooms, because they are heavy, doesn't pull it down, and then you've wasted beauty. Peonies and Amsonia, that combination, because as the bud evolves, the Amsonia erectii, the foliage, thin, that contrast to me is amazing. And as the peony bud swells and begins to open, you take the smaller buds off. This peony on the right here, honestly, it filled up the size of my hand. That bloom ended up being 7 inches, giving it room to do what it's going to do. And then who wouldn't want roses? One of my favorite roses is a rose called At Last. When it blooms, it really is at last. I've got roses for cutting in my garden. Adding it to other arrangements always brings me joy and anyone who I gift them to. When you have a cutting garden in your yard, you can cut, if you know what you're planting, you can cut and it'll rebloom. Or you can cut, take a picture of it, bring it in the house, capture that moment. You can mix up your roses with any other perennials, maybe not with daffodils. They don't really agree with each other. Daffodils, they secrete something that you really don't want in your arrangements. But using what else is around is wonderful. And it does not always have to be in bloom. Think of foliage. This is my garden right now. So the spring, I collected peonies. I collected the blooms from the Amsonia, blooms from heuchera, and the leaves from heuchera, the blooms from astilbe. All of these went into my spring arrangements. And many people say, well, after those things bloom, then what happens? I've got daylilies that pop up. I do not cut my daylily blooms because they only last for a day. However, as that magic is happening, the phlox, this is the year of the phlox. The phlox is forming its buds. And when I go outside, like right now, there's a storm brewing. If I walked out my front door, there's a subtle scent from the pink phlox. And it just envelops you and makes you feel like you're, being hugged by your great aunt. It's that subtle fragrance, that sweetness in the air that many people just really simply wouldn't imagine. I I have no turf in my yard. When people come by and they go, oh, your flowers are beautiful, I try to make sure that everyone that comes here leaves with a bouquet. Also, in this cutting garden in my front, I do not water. I know many people go, oh, but you should water every 7 days. We've had enough rain, particularly this year, even with our high temperatures. Using natives, so native phlox flora, using natives matters. It counts. So my cutting garden in the back will also include native plants so that I don't have to worry about if I miss a day watering. I'm not going to worry about fertilizing. This particular garden, I really have to tell you, I did not really have time to clean it up from the fall. I call it my fall meltdown. And I kept trying to find time, and I really felt bad. But everything, these hollow stalks and stems, provided a safe haven for the winter beneficial insects. I left it alone. And I had a very busy spring. And even in my busyness, my garden, this is my garden. There is no hose. The only thing I sprinkle down once a year is biotone from espoma. That's it. Everything else, my garden grows and it feeds itself. When I think of my cutting garden, while it will be manicured, it will be a specialty cutting garden, but it will always have hydrangeas and it will always have phlox. It will always have larkspur and it will always have hellebore, because those are plants that I can count on. Those are plants that I can use in endless arrangements, and they're perennial. So they're going to come back every year, and I don't have to worry about planting them every year. I can divide them. They will multiply on their own, and I'll be able to share and bring more of my garden inside. And this is not the grand finale. This will take me into about mid-September. The hydrangeas in the background, they will start changing colors. I will dry them and use them in the wintertime for winter arrangements. And every so often, someone will say, I know it's in the winter, but can you make me a bouquet? I use those dried hydrangeas. They go a long way. With some holly branches, with some camellia leaves. I've got an alley of camellias just beyond that hydrangea, so that I always have green foliage for cutting. As I've gotten deeper into this cut flower industry, some of the friends along the way, like Dee Hall, she's in Black Flora. Dee and I have become very good friends, and Dee has created an entity for Black flower farmers. We're growing, and the members are from all over, from South Africa, Kentucky, Norfolk, England, Durham, North Carolina, Ontario, and more. So if you're considering learning more about becoming a Black flower farmer or supporting a Black flower farmer, make a difference. Tap into our community. Even when I'm ordering flowers now, I try to find an African-American florist or a minority florist. Why? Because a lot of times they are overlooked. You go with who you know, the bigger names. I encourage everyone to try connecting with the Black flower farming community. A lot of them are growing locally. So you're not worried about flowers that came from another country. You're going to enjoy flowers that were grown 10, 15 miles away. It is a profession that I think more people need to tap into. When your hands are connected with the soil, there's a feeling that comes over you. And I say this from experience. If I've had a rough day of work, I can come home. I plant closely, so I really don't have a lot of weeds, but I can come home and cut some flowers. I can come home and look at the bee on the head of my ignatia in the front. I can anticipate the glow that's going to come from my rutabaga hirta as the fall comes in. So when the phlox and the hydrangea are winding down, black-eyed Susans, my rutabaga hirta, they will start coming into play, the mums. I'm anticipating fall when I see this. And I can mix this up with the burnished leaves of the hydrangea, the oak leaf hydrangea. It's more than just the bloom. It's the foliage. The foliage can really, really add excitement to a bouquet. And let's not forget the branches of trees. Some of the fall foliage mixed with some mums, pansies, make an awesome display. Many people say pansies as a cut flower. They're breeding pansies now with a longer stem. And let me tell you, buy a small vase. Put a pansy in a vase. I guarantee it'll put a smile on your face. Pansies have happy faces anyway. Your mums, cut them, bring them in, use them in a vase. Don't just use them as outdoor autumnal color. Utilize them as a cut flower. This spring, I also went to my first Black Girl Florist Conference. Let me tell you, there is something about the power of gathering. There were women from Texas, California, as well as the East Coast. Valerie provided education that was on point, that helped us connect, told us a few things that we needed to know, and we created our own arrangements. Talia Boone was there. Just so many people, other African-American women that are involved in the forestry industry. And it was amazing because the conversations we had about putting on events and people not knowing who you were until you showed up. And sometimes we were well received, and other times we were not. Not being received well kind of puts a little fire in you, makes you want to show up better. African-American women at this conference had chosen flowers as a means to amplify their voice in social justice. That is powerful. Some of the women were in their community centers and they gave classes. One lady in Texas wondered, how could she create a scholarship to bring another child in to teach them what they needed to know? She was a thriving florist. She bought a floral shop for her mom because her mother enjoyed making arrangements. So a lot of us give back. A lot of us are looking to learn. A lot of us are seeking others to connect with. Valerie has Black Girl Florist set up so that it's by region. And she also on her website will list where you can find a Black florist in your area if that florist is registered with her. I've used many of them this year, and I'm always seeking new florists that look like me because I want to make sure that my dollars go to support someone, whether they're a flower farmer, a stylist, or someone that just makes arrangements for the joy of it. It's very, very meaningful. As my cut flower in the back evolves, my next step is to have veterans compost, amend my soil so that I can start with a good foundation first. I'll plant some seeds this fall, more seeds in the spring. And you can bet your bottom dollar, in the midst of it all, there will be some collard greens as well. The importance of now, why this book, why becoming a florist now, makes a difference to me. I want to inspire other people to look at the flowers beyond their beauty, look at the flowers and really recognize what they can do for you. Reimagine the possibilities of just creating a bouquet. Think about maybe growing some cut flowers on that strip of land between you and your neighbor, and you can share bouquets. What a great way to build community. Very simple. And the children. Right now, our kids have been through this period of unintentional pausing. Everyone doesn't want to work in fast food. Some kids don't want to go to college or can't afford to go to college. My dream is to create and expose these children of all races to the power of the flower. The cut flower industry could use the infusion of the younger generation to keep it going. Imagine, instead of your child going to college and working at a fast food place, imagine having a plot in the backyard where they could make arrangements, perhaps start a subscription service for bouquets, perhaps have someone ask them, could you help me with my wedding? Think about the power of that. Giving them ownership of their future through flowers. That to me is amazing. Amazing. Reminding people while nature is outside, bring it in. Don't just look at it through a window. We just had a couple years of that. Bring it indoors. Enjoy it inside. Sometimes just sit and look at the detail of a bouquet of hydrangeas. Look at hellebore in a vase or floating on water as they drop their seeds. It's like little black confetti. The pink phlox in my vase that I look at, as that bloom ages, the petals will flutter down like a parade just happened. And I watched it in slow motion. Having a cut flower garden reminds us to play outside. Imagine a pack of zinnia seeds, a pack of cosmos seeds. Anyone can grow those. Rough up the soil, plant the seeds, and wait for the magic, wait for the power of the flower to bring joy to your soul. You'd be surprised at how many cut flowers you can grow that are edible, calendula. Having a sprig of mint in a bouquet when there's no other fragrance, and every time you walk by, that minty fragrance captures your attention. The power of a flower. The beneficial aspects of giving back to nature, from the monarchs to the bees to the hummingbirds. Flowers, being surrounded by flowers, can only bring more joy than anyone could ever imagine. Turning off the TV and looking at a bouquet, that's my kind of fun. And at the end of the day, if you really get caught up in the power of flowers, it just might lead to a career. There are many entities that are around now that will offer scholarships. If someone is really interested in horticulture, reach out. Reach out to your local nursery, your local nurserymen's association, your local landscape association. See what kind of help they can give you to make your dream come true. Having a cut flower farm, that's not my retirement. That's my reinvention of self. Because there's not a day that goes by that I don't have a flower somewhere nearby. Black Flora is available on Amazon, and maybe ask for it at your local independent bookstore. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to carry it. Hopefully, if you purchase it, if it's at a library, Hopefully it will inspire you to go, maybe I will just have a little patch of cut flowers. And if you don't want to do that, support a local cut flower grower. Flower farmers, flower farming is going to be our next big industry. Wait and see. You'd be surprised. And while my podcast has been on hiatus, it's coming back in September. And we're going to be chatting it up with some of the flower farmers, some of the cut flower growers, near and far. And we're going to talk about seeing cut flower farms anywhere and everywhere that I might wander and go to. I'm also back to traveling. This past weekend, I was in Buffalo at the Buffalo Garden Walk. Several people there had cut flowers and just a strip, but I knew that they were seizing that opportunity of that little patch of land to grow a cut flower, to bring inside, to marvel at the beauty, and just celebrate the power of flowers. I hope that you follow me. And even in the Urban Garden book, you can grow cut flowers. It's easier than you think, and you can grow them anywhere. Think of it as a screen between you and your neighbor. Have them in different heights, because it'll be a beautiful fence or fence-like patch of land. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Terry. I'm Ayana, I'm the horticulture associate here at Madison Square Park. And just thank you for taking the time to shine a light on so many individuals in this field who, rightfully so, may not feel seen as their counterparts in the past haven't. And I've used plants like amaranth, chocolate mint, basil, fennel, and bouquets myself. And I think that's how I got caught up in the power of the flower and ended up in this field as well. So thank you. And thank you, Jessica, for kicking us off. And if you have any questions for those in our audience, you haven't submitted them yet, now will be the time. So I'm just going to get started on some of the ones that were submitted already. So we have, if I wanted to get started in gardening late in life with no prior experience, where should I start? I think you kind of touched on ways to incorporate it into your daily life, but do you have like a tip or two for someone who may be kind of like hesitant about, making a sudden pivot or anything like that?
Because I am a seasoned person. So I have come across a lot of other seasoned people that are about to retire that have decided to go back into the garden. You don't need a massive amount of land. You can start in a pot. You can have a meadow in a pot. And in that meadow in a pot, choose a large container so that you can include diverse seeds, because that's the most inexpensive way. If you're not sure, start with a few seeds and add at least one perennial. That perennial can be an ornamental grass. It can, because you can use the grass blooms as well as the foliage. You could use that planter and put bulbs in the bottom. Bulbs, to me, are like the gateway into cut flowers, because you put this thing in the ground, you cover it with soil, and it evolves, and you're not doing anything to it. When you realize your hands are magic from planting a bulb, and try lilies as well as daffodils. Great cut flowers, sprinkle seeds on top, and let the magic begin. You have to start somewhere. Bulbs, annuals, and at least one perennial. If you want to dig in the ground, do a swap, a strip. A square, I suggest a rectangle, and sprinkle some seeds in. Water it with a watering can. You don't need a hose, and see what happens. The magic will happen, but don't be scared.
All right. And we also have, what's the most common mistake you've seen experienced gardeners make when cultivating their gardens? Sorry.
The most common mistake, there's going to be controversy about this. Tilling.
Mm.
Weed seeds have a very long lifespan. When you till, all those weed seeds that were dormant below the surface, you just brought them up to the light. You've woken them up. And then when you have a weedy patch and you wonder, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? Try a layered approach. Remove the soil. Now, also, I do not use chemicals. So I hand remove any turf, grass, or weeds. I do amend it with a little compost. I make my own compost from the debris in my garden. I don't use anything that has seeds in it because I don't want to spread something I don't want, or an invasive. But I'll use the stalks from my ornamental grass. I use leaves from my oak tree in the front, leaves from my plant material, any leaves that are not diseased. I let it break down. I've got compost piles behind my garden beds in recyclable containers. I put that back into the soil. I think the most common mistake is people feel I got to put down a chemical and I've got to do all this tilling. You really don't. When I bought my house 18 years ago, there was something that looked like grass and perilla. It took me 3 years to hand pull all the perilla out by root because it's a little aggressive. And from there, I planted my hellebore. But did I till? No, I've not tilled anything on my property. And I'm on a third of an acre. Everything that I have cultivated, I've done by hand.
And do you know of any work exchange or live-in farmhand opportunities that have been recently on your radar? Just West Coast, East Coast, just anything that stands out to you?
There is a green industry website that you can tap into. And once again, check with your local landscape association. They will generally have those opportunities at their fingertips. I'm in Prince George's County. I would check with our soil and water conservation team. She's really, really good about finding things. If you ask the question, because I'm an advocate of the extension office, I believe if you check with your local cooperative extension, you can find, they will connect you with opportunities everywhere. But there is a green industry website. If you Google green industry and look up farming. One of the young women in my book actually did a farm share, I believe it was in Maine. And that's when she realized that wasn't the part of being involved with flowers that she wanted to do. She was more of a botanical creative, but at least she tried it. And it was a work share, so she stayed there and worked there. So they're all over the place. I probably would check more in the South. There are tons of Black farming associations and entities, especially in the southern states, North Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, and they're looking for help. So check out your Black farmers or check out any of the farming entities as well as your extension office. The guidance is there.
Alrighty, and can you talk a little bit more about how choosing natives helped you water less? I think there was.
Well, let's start natives. Now, I'm not one of these people that, oh, you just only grow natives. However, there are benefits to natives. Like I said, I do not water my garden. This past spring, I took some peace roses down to the Ann Spencer Museum House and Garden. Well, I had to break the bundles up and put them in 5-gallon buckets and water them. When I hooked my hose up, the hose had dry rotted because I just don't water. Mother Nature takes care of my garden. Let's talk about natives. Natives basically have grown in less than perfect conditions. So you have natives, you have nativars, which is a cultivar or a bread. They've taken a native and made it more palatable to the general public. My Rudbeckia hirta, the goldfinches love to eat the seeds, the roots. Even this past spring, the power of a native, I had my oak tree limbed up. And when the guys left, I could not look at the ground under my tree, because that's where my Rudbeckia is. It just looked like a dust bowl. And all I could think about was, well, I will sow some more seed, or I'll go to my local native resource and buy some more. But I waited, and we had a wet spring. You would never know that they trampled. When I say you'll see the pictures in a couple of weeks, because the Rudbeckia hirta is beginning to pop now. It was barren. It was like a dust bowl. Natives, they withstand drought. Most of them, if they're in the right conditions, they withstand drought. Some of them can get really, really happy because the soil might be too rich, and where it should be maintained, it might go, oh, I'm really loving this soil. I think I'll go over there too. That could be a problem. But if you educate yourself, National Wildlife Federation has an awesome list of native plants. Or go to your local nursery. A good independent nursery will have a section of native plants. Read up on what you're trying to do. Do you have a damp site? Do you have a site that you just can't get the hose up there, but you want to put something there? The Rudbeckia hirta, I could get the hose there, but I choose not to. But when you see this wonderful, clean green foliage evolving, it's basal foliage, and then the branches come up, and then you see these little nodules, and you know it's going to be a nice little yellow bloom in September. Adding natives to your garden adds diversity. It adds something in your garden that you really don't have to think twice about if you plant it in the right place. They're sturdy, they're hardy. Even as our temperatures are changing, your natives are learning and adapting because they've been through this before, and probably worse, and they're still here. So I encourage everyone, you don't have to go totally native. Add a native. I personally suggest Rudbeckia hirta. It's been working for me.
Yes, we actually have a pledge on our website for like a challenge that we're doing where folks can commit to just planting a native, just seeing how that goes for them. But we're running short on time, 7 o'clock from the dot. So we're going to forward any unanswered questions to you, and Terry's going to share her responses, and we'll get them out to you in the coming weeks. I just think it's worth mentioning that so many folks felt compelled to just comment and just say that they were inspired by listening to you talk, and just proud to see and be here tonight to listen to you. So I want to thank you again. This concludes our program. So thank you everyone for taking the time to step into the Zoom room and listen. And I want you to have a good evening. Thank you so much, Terry.
You're welcome.